Oop. You guys come on in. Hello. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. So welcome to the Investing in AR, VR, MR, XR panel. My name is Tom Emrich. I'm a partner at Super Ventures. We're a new fund that opened in January of last year, dedicated to augmented reality. And today we're going to be talking about the investment climate within this new reality space. And I'm going to let each of our panelists today introduce themselves and give a little bit of context as to how they relate to the investment ecosystem within AR and VR, starting with Ray.
Yeah, so my name is Ray Walia. I wear multiple hats in the tech industry here in Canada. So I run Launch Academy, which is a tech hub, one of the largest in Canada. I run Traction Conference, which is one of the largest tech conferences in North America. But more in context of what we're doing here, I run a venture fund called Victory Square, where we focus on sports, health, and entertainment companies. VR, AR, MR are really hot topics that we're really interested in diving into. A couple of existing investments. One of our portfolio companies is called Fantasy 6 Sports. Through that, we're doing a lot with VR and AR in the sports industry.
Great.
My name is Hrish, Lotlikar. I'm with the Rogue Initiative, which is a VR content studio, also doing film and television. My background's in technology venture capital as well. What we are doing at the Rogue Initiative is creating new intellectual property, new content IP that we start in VR and then we take it transmedia to film and TV and IMAX and all the way to merchandising. My background is in technology venture capital as well, so I'll be providing kind of a perspective as a founder approaching the financing space in general.
Great.
Hello, hi, I'm Nogi from Gumi. Gumi is a mobile gaming company based in Japan, and we have a several hundred employee kind of big gaming studio. We have several studios outside of Japan as well. And then I have a couple of global hit titles. One is Final Fantasy. We got IP from Square Enix, and then we develop and operate a game. And the other game is Brave Frontier. Those are our first hit titles. And then we actually really into the VR space at the moment. And then we established the fund, San Francisco based for the VR fund. And then that's a $50 million US size fund. And then we actively invest in globally. And then we also established the incubation acceleration program in Tokyo, Seoul, and we recently announced another one in Helsinki. That's what we are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a lot of. I wanted to ask first about the areas that investors are investing in within AR and VR. What are the types of investments that you're seeing being made, either from your fund or from other funds, that are currently being the topics of focus that are getting some money from investors within the space? I'm just going to open it up. Maybe we can start with Nogi.
As far as I see the investment market, the back in 2014, 50s, then the investors' focus is actually more like infrastructure, like hardware. But in the 2016s, people just shifted to invest more like new technology, like usage platforms, those kind of things. And probably end of this year, people more focus on the more like contents. And then our side, we have multiple sources to invest because the VR fund is actually very general AR VR investment, but still early stage investment, like a seed, Series A. And then we have invested like 19 companies at the moment. And then more like a positional tracking, also content is actually the Rogue Initiative. And then also the Rec Room and a job simulator, those companies we invested. And the other companies are Immersive. Now they are doing the VR ad network. Those kind of technology companies we are investing at the moment. And then incubation program side, this is a more early stage because we incubate. And then we invest like 50 to 100K per companies. And then those are more like some gaming, also new technologies. Still like our focus is more like tool technology layers.
Okay.
Yeah.
For us, we're For us, we're probably more focused on platforms. We work with a lot of content providers to produce content for some of our applications and implementations. For example, we're working with the BC Sports Hall of Fame. We're going to transform the entire Sports Hall of Fame and modernize it with VR, AR, and different types of experiences. The content producers will bring them on board to help us execute, but they may not necessarily be investments that we'll make. If there's different platforms that help us enable the experience and that can be repeatable and scalable to 20, 30 other Sports Hall of Fames around the world that we can then market to, those are more appealing to us as an investment. So it's more inclined to be around platforms that have the scalability as opposed to specific content producers.
Okay. And Hrish, what are you seeing in the space?
I think we've seen a variety of things through the last 2 years. So I think early on, we saw a lot of investors that we were talking to that were interested in content, but still very interested in kind of building platforms and tools. But I think as those investments have been consummated and there are becoming some platforms that are becoming more dominant in the space, and as you're looking globally as well as other media platforms are entering the VR space, I think we're seeing all these players on the investment side as well as the strategics, fortunately for us, looking at content. So I think we're at a spot now, I think Nogi voiced this as well, where a lot of the other tools and platforms are getting to be at a point of establishment in the space. Obviously there's opportunities there, but I think that content players and companies that can now bring the audience to those platforms are going to become paramount.
Okay. And what are some of those opportunities? I know we talked a little bit now, so we've identified that folks are investing in content, but they're also investing in tools, platforms, scalable solutions that have potentially a greater path to revenue in order to scale. But what are specifically some of the challenges and the opportunities that you see? Hrish, you're creating content, so you must be coming up against problems on a regular basis. You guys are investing and looking at deal flow that are tackling some of the larger issues that need to be solved. What are these? What are the challenges that are left on the table for startups to rise to the occasion and solve?
So the device penetration speed actually slower than we expected. That's why the startups a little bit struggling to just survive, and some of companies just little bit become more less aggressive recently. This is because they cannot earn the money yet. This is the biggest challenge at the moment, I think.
Okay.
On the device side, on the headset side, I think there's still a lot of innovation, especially as you look at price points and the ability to be totally untethered and to not have to buy a PC. I think you're seeing Sony PlayStation do pretty well for that reason, is the number of consoles that are out in the marketplace. So I think as investors are looking at innovation, and companies like Apple and others are eyeing the space, and as we're going into VR to AR, I think the form factor of kind of moving from a phone to another device on the hardware side is going to be very interesting as we look at things like price point and innovation in terms of the tech, right, as well as the hardware.
Okay.
So I was just recently in San Diego speaking at the GigSeek conference, the Internet Gaming Conference, and one of the big challenges is there's a lot of entertainment industry professionals that are still trying to wrap their head around what is VR, how is this going to affect my business, how can I optimize this technology to my infrastructure, my existing infrastructure. And so a lot of casino operators that were there was game operators or regulatory bodies. They're just trying to wrap their head around the VR experience and how it can transform their existing infrastructures. But the biggest challenge that I had was trying to convince these casino operators that if you're trying to drive all these people to your casino, the last thing you want to do is put a headset on top of them and replicate a casino, because you're already in a casino. Right? So how do you really understand the power of VR, what it can do for your business? And they're just still trying to wrap their heads around that. So the challenge from an investor's perspective is not only do you have to find the opportunity that you see potential to scale and grow this, but you need to make sure that the industry they're targeting is caught up to that now. or you're going to spend most of your time educating them. And that, as an investor, you don't really want to be in the seat of the educator.
Right, right. I know like at Super Ventures, we tend to invest in companies that their end user is the OEM or specific segments in the enterprise that are utilizing AR and VR for training and simulations. And on the AR side, there's a lot of problems that still need to be solved. Tracking, localization, the ability to use like a HoloLens or a Meta out in the sun, for example. Advancements in light field. There still seems to be a lot of opportunity for startups to find their niche and solve for some of these really hard problems that can be helpful to build this ecosystem that we're all hoping comes together. I think that's important to put in perspective because we seem to be really impatient and feel like the space is here, and in many ways it is, but there is still some technology problems that have to be solved for in order for this to really hit what this has become.
That's also a big part of it is that we live and breathe this. We're in it every single day. We're immersed in AR, VR dialogue on a daily basis. But when you look at some of the end consumers, whether it's enterprise or actual day-to-day consumers, they're not as in tune with it. Like I spent probably half of my time at the conference teaching people what is AR and what is MR, what's the difference between those two, and how are they different than VR. And it surprises you that, actually it's a bit of a shot of reality that you get back into those type of environments like, oh yeah, I gotta remember that this is still bleeding edge, cutting edge for a lot of other people.
So then let's talk about the market since you brought it up. Where is the market today? How are you as a startup pitching the market to investors, and how are you as investors sizing the market, and which markets are you focusing on to ensure that your startups have a quick path to revenue?
On the startup side, we're looking at where the market is in terms of viewers, right? So one area that we're very interested in is kind of expanding our reach globally and specifically into China. So we're very interested in that region of the world because of the specific characteristics of how VR is consumed. There's a big push over there for LBEs and arcades. The HTC is doing quite a bit in that area in terms of getting VR into the hands of whatever demographic is out there. While some of these headsets, HTC Vive and Oculus are really out of the price point of many prospective users, but with that kind of push into LBE and these spaces that people can go in and for a few dollars play a VR type game or experience, and what IMAX is doing as well, I think for us, as we examine the overall market, we're pitching ourselves to leverage those types of opportunities, LBEs, arcades, etc.
Okay.
Okay. So our current target is actually the high end in terms of the contents, because as you know, some of games already earn like a couple of $1 million, but as you see, the mobile VR still it's quite difficult to monetize, and because quality-wise, as you try both, and when I try mobile first, it's okay. Maybe I don't want to try next time.
Right.
But the high-end VR, I was so impressed. Oh my God, what's this? Right?
Yeah.
And I want to try many things. And then company just started to just change their content development strategy, because initially people just tried sort of like very simple experience, not interactive sometimes, but now more interactive, and then more storytelling, and then more strategic. That's why contents are getting better. And then people, I think, just pay money for the high quality one. That's why we're targeting like high-end the contents at the moment. But of course, in the future, the mobile device is going to be the next communication device,
right,
as a AR. That's why mobile going to just drive the contents market growth. But still, right now, high-end is the key, I think.
Okay.
For us, so I've got a saying, content is king, but it's the size of your distribution network that's going to dictate the size of your kingdom. And so for us as Victory Square and Fantasy 6, we're looking to build that kingdom for our content producers. Like I said before, we may not be investing in the content producers, but we want to partner with them. And so we're building relationships with resort companies, casinos, BC Sports Hall of Fame, where we get that one-to-many effect, where they're going to bring in the audience, we're able to deploy technology and opportunities, and hit a wider audience than trying to bank on technology catching up to the price point that it's now viable for the everyday consumer. So right now, we want to be that distribution network. We want to help content producers build that kingdom for themselves. That being said, there are some opportunities like you're targeting high net worth individuals. We look at casinos as an opportunity to not only get a high volume of people, but get a pathway into high net worth individuals that we can actually work with and start to experiment on more cutting edge, bleeding edge things that we can validate, knowing that that will actually then translate to the everyday consumer in 2 years' time.
And so the three of you have talked a lot about VR and the focus on VR. How are you treating AR as a startup? How are you treating AR as an investment? Is it the same for you? Are you looking for companies that have more 3D fundamentals that can bridge between the two platforms? Are you holding off on AR and focusing on VR first? Where are you guys all at?
So our investment principle is start from VR. Because VR is very simply understanding easily, like movies, games, very catchy. That's why people just started creating. But next generation should be definitely going to be AR, and then the next generation going to be MR. Because people now enjoy VR, but in the future, probably people say within the 5 years. So now everyone just wear AR glass, and then we just gonna see real world, but so many additional information like Facebook probably opened their identification data, probably the Yelp also disclose the data, and if you see the real world, the restaurant, you see the rating. Also, maybe Tinder disclose the data.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just match someone.
Right.
Yeah, those kind of things can happen.
Right.
And then VR game gonna be the one of the AR, and then you just click the VR game button, and it's gonna be VR.
Right.
That's why VR, AR, and MR. That's what we are thinking.
I see. Yeah, that's actually funny. I was on a stage with Steve Mann, who is from Toronto. He's the father of wearable computing, and he's also the chief scientist of Meta. And somebody asked him, like, why did you create an AR device? Why didn't you create a VR device? And he said, I can be a VR device. I'll just ship a little black plastic window that you put on top of the AR device, and then bam, it's both. So I think that idea of having both is kind of a shared sentiment in the industry. What about you guys? Where is AR at for you?
Well, for us, we've got a pretty high-profile client that we're working with in introducing AR into their resort, and it actually has more legs than the VR, and it's interesting because
more legs meaning what?
Because it's basically running through the mobile device. It has a lot more immediate applications to their core business, as opposed to creating a VR experience in the resort would need them to create a whole new marketing campaign, drive attention to it, and train people, whereas the AR can more easily be integrated into existing operations. For me, I actually see them as two separate activities. I'm really, really keen on AR right now and MR. VR, it's just a lot more required to get it to the point where it's going to have consistent applications and implementations in their business.
Right.
Especially coming from the entertainment resort type of scenario. That being said, the VR stuff does get people's attention right away. It's me coming in and telling them, okay, what is the true problem that you're trying to solve? Actually, AR is a better solution for that, not VR because of X, Y, Z reasons. And then we end up talking more about AR than the VR side.
Okay. And Hrish?
On the content side, I think VR is obviously very powerful because you're blocking out everything else except this content. But I think VR on the content side is a natural gateway to AR. So you're in a experience at home, and you're able to kind of see some of this content that we would normally just show you in AR, but do it in an environment that's more natural to you. So there's things that we can do with that content that kind of fits more in an AR environment. So it's a little bit kind of adjusting kind of how we think about how that content, where it takes you, what kind of experiences, and then in the way that we work with brands, because that's one of the other things that we do is work with brands that want to create VR content or AR content. And for those brands, that AR content is also very, very suitable. So I think, on the content side, and as a startup, we know that AR is coming. We're anticipating it, and we're thinking about strategies that allow us to kind of modify what we're doing and make it fit naturally in AR.
I see. So Nogi and Ray, like the F8 announcement where Facebook opened up their augmented reality platform is being touted as one of the watershed moments for AR. Does that start change your investment strategy in looking at AR on mobile? Will you see yourselves investing in any companies that are leveraging that type of platform or the mobile platform? I know you already kind of mentioned you are, but...
So for us, it didn't change, it just reinforced.
Right.
And those conversations, it was timely, F8, and then I was at Gigsy, and I was talking to these big casino operators, showing them the validation, like, look, this is something that Facebook's putting billions of dollars of resources into. It's not going anywhere. This is something that you really need to start wrapping your head around. You started seeing light bulbs going off in these executives' heads. And for us, again, AR is just a far more effective tool in the casino environment than VR is, because you're able to layer things onto existing infrastructure that entices people to engage more, as opposed to transporting them into a totally new environment, which takes them away from the casino floor or the casino operations. Right.
In addition, I'd say, on the wearable side, you're seeing that Facebook do a lot of things that Snapchat's doing. So similarly, you're gonna, possibly see Facebook glasses, or, and Google, the next iteration of Google Glass. So I think there's a lot of things on the hardware side that is going to cause companies like ours on the content side kind of go with what's going on in terms of hardware and what's available in AR hardware.
Yeah, so our VR fund, like I told you guys, we invested 19 companies, but AR specific companies only 1 or 2. And then the incubation program, we invested 25, but no AR companies yet.
Okay.
But as you said, Facebook just opened their platform.
Right.
And then, we are just trying to investigate it right now.
Okay.
But actually, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
That's why we just keep meeting people to find out one new solution.
Right.
Then if team good, technology good, maybe just going to invest.
I see.
Yeah.
But if Apple gets into the mix, do you think that the attention to mobile AR will heat up even more?
I think so.
Okay.
And probably what we presume is like more like enterprise, more tool company for AR first, and this is going to be probably our next target.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So the last question I'm going to do before I open it up to the audience, so get ready for audience questions, is around this probably media headline created VR winter. Right, so supposedly we're in a VR winter. The idea is that investments in VR have chilled, they've slowed down. Is this true? Is this true from a startup perspective? Is this true from an investor perspective?
Actually, the amount of investment is actually gets slowed down a little bit. That's what I forgot the numbers, but we believe it's gonna booming again, probably after 3 quarters of this year. Yeah. Because the big guys have opened the platforms, and then there's the opportunities here. Yeah.
Yeah, just to echo that sentiment, like now that with F8's showing their cards, and now Apple's going to come around and show what their cards are, I think you're going to see a resurgence of a lot more investment activity happening, the early stage investment. But then the other side of it is the deals that are now ready for their second round of funding are going to start to come roll around as well. So you'll start seeing some larger checks being deployed.
Okay.
Yeah, on our side, we definitely are seeing more interest in content, per the point earlier about other tools and platforms kind of already being invested in. But I think as we see traction on the hardware side with headsets and people going and adopting mobile VR, I think we're going to see again a resurgence in new companies being formed and investors being interested. So I think as a startup, we understand that we have to raise enough capital to be able to kind of last and figure out other sources of revenue, as well as be careful in terms of how we, what choices we make and what priorities we look at. But We're in this for the long term, and I think I speak for everyone in this industry. This is something that people are in this because we're passionate about it. So we're not too worried about the VR winter. I think it's going to come back big time.
Yeah. Right. Any questions from you in the audience? There's a mic up here if you want to come on up and use it, and one on the other side. Feel free to come up and ask.
Okay. Thanks for all that insight, guys. That was great. Quick question. Could you speak a little about some history in investing in hardware companies or companies that have hardware for VR and AR? If you have or not, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
So we don't invest hardware at the moment because hardware is always commoditized. That's why it's quite quite difficult to make a decision. That's why we don't do that.
Yeah, hardware is just not in our wheelhouse. We're more on the entertainment side and actual implementation. So it's not something that we've been keen on looking at.
Hardware is on our roadmap for investments. We've made 4 hardware investments so far. So we've invested in Nitero, which is a Wi-Fi chip that got bought by AMD recently to untether AR, VR devices. We've invested in a VR pen platform. We've invested in a smart camera and comm system for helmets as well. So about 3 or 4 hardware investments we've made so far that we can talk about. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hardware is hard,
Put
though.
the moderator onto you now. So is this something you're going to see more and more activity in on the hardware side?
On the hardware side?
Yeah.
There's just still some hard problems that need to be solved for that is room for investment opportunity on the hardware end. So like input, output, controller type investments I think are interesting. Making devices untethered, battery advancements, display advancements, energy storage advancements. These are the type of hardware investments that we're looking to make. We're not so interested in investing in a product per se. Like for example, if someone came to us with a pair of smart glasses, we probably would really have to take a look at it to see if there was something there that we could invest in, because it's hard right now. There's too many platforms out there. ODG, Epson, Meta, HoloLens, Oculus, Vive. It's not the time to come out with an HMD. It's not the time to come out with a pair of smart glasses, but it is the time to come up with a new optic design. It is the time to come out with a miniaturization of the processor or a new advancements in lithium-ion battery, because those are still the problems that are really creating the bulk, the heaviness that's really impacting making the device small enough for you all in the audience to want to wear it on a regular basis.
And where do you see a lot of that coming from? Like universities?
Yep, there's a lot that are coming from the universities. And there are some companies that were, Nitero's history, for example, they created this 60 gigahertz Wi-Fi chip not for the VR industry. They actually pivoted after a while. So there are some, especially in the medical space, that have been developing solutions, and then they find a home within VR and AR. And if you recall, even the Leap Motion story started in that way, right? They didn't start in VR. There was no VR at the time. They started as a controller on computers and then kind of pivoted and kind of found their home within VR and AR. So yeah, we're finding solutions there as well. But the academic ecosystem is ripe for that. Yeah.
For those of you who have larger funds where you have different pools of investors that have come together, can you talk at a high level about where your investment's coming from? Is it a lot of strategic companies, other investment funds, government, high net worth individuals? Just very interested in hearing about that.
So our model is very different. So we're a venture build studio. What that means is that my business partner, Shafin Diamond, and I get really hands-on involved with companies at a very early stage. We then work with the companies and try to find 3 paths of future investments. The first one is that they're cash flow positive and we want to bootstrap them and then find non-dilutive financing for them and continue to grow them. The second one is they hit various metrics that we are comfortable with, then taking that company to our pool of investors, our strategic partners, Tom, potentially, and showcasing them to those type of investors, saying that, hey, we've de-risked this for you. We've been working with this company for the last year, 2 years, and we put in our own capital. Our skin is in the game, but we think it's hit the marks that now justify this to the next level. Then the third one, which is on rare occasions, we will find companies that we are able to take through the junior venture markets and public markets here. It's a methodology that I put together the last few years called the Lean IPO. That's where I work with a company for a year to determine what's the viability of the company and then understand, does it actually have the traits to survive the junior venture market? If it does, I will then spend the next year working with that company down that path. At the end of 2 years, it might not actually fit the junior venture markets, but it might. And we've already done that about 3 times now. So.
Okay, our case is it totally depends on the way of the investment. So PR fund is a pure investment company, but more like we don't much support it. But incubation program is incubation with hands-on support. We just train everything. Then we have a very strong mentorship program, and then we have a mentor day every month, and then we just hands-on support do it. That's what we're doing, and then Gumi itself also invests directly. This is more like a strategic, and then Gumi main focus is a VR game because we are a gaming company. And in that case, we try to get, for example, publishing deal kind of things. And we also try to expand their channel to how to distribute their game.
Okay, final thought that I'd love for you all to say is just like maybe 3 areas that you're currently eyeing for investment or that you are aware of that investors are looking for to kind of help give some context to, especially startup and entrepreneurs out there as to what's on your mind, kind of help you with your deal flow too. How's that?
So I kind of alluded that I'm doing a lot of activity in the entertainment space right now. We're working with some big resorts and Sports Hall of Fame and whatnot. So our focus really is on the one-to-many experiences. What type of technology can we come in to analyze those activities, engage those audiences on a large scale, and again, not so much on the content producers, but on the infrastructure that we can support around that.
For us, on the content side, I think part of our strategy that we've been eyeing for a while, and it's kind of the basis of what we do, is utilizing and leveraging VR and AR for other mediums that are already established. So, we start our content in VR and then move to other mediums, and so we're thinking a lot about how can that be done at its most optimal format and process. And then there's a lot of things on the tech side in terms of what we're doing in terms of content creation that's evolving, whether that's in the engine or kind of looking at live action content and kind of combining that with in-engine content. So I'd say those are the 2 areas of focus in terms of our business as well as our tech side of what we're doing.
So, like I said, we are the early stage investment. That's why we see the team itself very much. And if they have a good track record, it's a good sign. And then if they have experience to expand the team, it's also very important. And then it also depends on how they monetize as a company itself, also the business-wise. And this is very important. If we say we're going to monetize 10 years later, of course we don't invest, right?
Right.
Those kind of things is very we are focusing on.
Okay. Well, we're running out of time, so I'd like to thank the panelists here. If you want to give them a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, and I'll get Nicholas back up here for the next session.